In 1949, Taiwan's population exploded by over 2 million people in just 3 years, including 600,000 soldiers. No, it wasn't an invasion, though it might as well have been. The Republic of China, after losing its civil war, decided to drag its battered soldiers and government to Taiwan. For the past 22 years, the communists and nationalists had been tearing China apart, while Taiwan sat on the sidelines as a Japanese colony, useful only as a resource farm for imperial conquests. After World War II, Taiwan was returned to China, but instead of fixing it up, both sides plundered its resources to fuel their civil war. By 1950, Taiwan was so poor that even Haiti was laughing at its GDP. And with a military-obsessed government in charge, things looked bleak. Yet somehow, fast forward a few decades, and now Taiwan's economy is putting even Germany and the US to shame. Foxconn, one of its mega companies, churns out 40% of the world's electronics, and Taiwan holds a near monopoly on semi-conductors. So, what's the secret behind Taiwan's industrial success story, and how has it thrived amidst looming geopolitical uncertainty? Back before the 1600s, Taiwan was home to indigenous tribes living their best lives, while the rest of the world barely knew they existed. Then, just when things were peaceful, the Dutch showed up in 1624, dragging the Spanish along a few years later like unwanted party crashers. European colonial powers couldn't resist Taiwan's charm, though it was the Dutch who managed to hang around longer than the others. That is, until the ultimate plot twist. Koxinga, the pirate-turned-general who booted the Dutch out in 1662. And just like that, Taiwan's fate took another wild turn. By the time the 17th century was wrapping up, the Qing dynasty thought, why not add Taiwan to our collection? Everything seemed fine, until Japan decided to crash the party during the First Sino-Japanese War in 1895. Japan snatched up Taiwan, kicking off its 50-year reign over the island. But hey, credit where it's due. During Japan's rule, Taiwan got a glow-up. Railroads, schools, infrastructure, you name it. Japan wasn't just using Taiwan as a summer getaway, though. It became a critical piece in their imperial puzzle during World War II. But as you know, all good things, or bad things, depending on your perspective, must come to an end. After losing World War II, Japan had to pack up and return Taiwan to China in 1945. But China wasn't exactly in prime condition to reclaim the island. The country was in the middle of a nasty breakup, the Chinese Civil War, with communists under Mao Zedong clashing with the nationalist Kuomintang led by Chiang Kai-shek. Spoiler, Mao and the communists won. Perhaps the most pivotal moment in Taiwan's modern history came in 1949 when the Chinese Nationalist Party fled mainland China after losing the Chinese Civil War to the communists. They retreated to Taiwan and set up what they claimed was the real China. And so began one of the longest, most bizarre political standoffs in modern history. For decades, Taiwan's government operated under the assumption that it was the legitimate ruler of all China, a claim that became more and more absurd as time went on. In reality, Taiwan was stuck in a geopolitical limbo. China refused to recognize Taiwan as an independent nation, and most of the world, bowing to Chinese pressure, followed suit. Even today, only a handful of countries officially recognize Taiwan as a sovereign state. Despite this, Taiwan found ways to thrive economically. Starting in the 1950s, the government implemented a series of land reforms and industrial policies that would lay the foundation for Taiwan's economic miracle. From agriculture to light manufacturing to high-tech industries, Taiwan's economy grew at an astounding pace. By the 1980s, it was one of the so-called Four Asian Tigers, along with South Korea, Singapore, and Hong Kong. Taiwan's industrial rise was not just a matter of good policy. It was born out of necessity. Isolated politically, the island had no choice but to innovate its way to success. The result? An economy that punches well above its weight class. The relationship between China and Taiwan is a complex and challenging one that makes Game of Thrones look like a walk in the park. If you want to understand Taiwan's industrial rise, you must understand its complicated, messy, and often tense relationship with China. You'd think that a country constantly being threatened by its much larger neighbor would crumble under pressure, but Taiwan has found a way to turn this toxic relationship into an economic advantage. Here's the thing. China might claim that Taiwan is part of its territory, but economically, the two are inextricably linked. China is Taiwan's largest trading partner, accounting for over 40% of its exports. Taiwan ships billions of dollars worth of goods, especially electronics and machinery, to China every year. Despite the political posturing, money talks and business, as they say, is booming. But don't get it twisted, this isn't some cozy partnership. China is doing everything in its power to isolate Taiwan on the global stage. The tensions between the two countries have escalated significantly in 2024, especially following the Taiwanese presidential election and increased U.S. support for Taiwan. After Taiwan elected Lai Ching-te, a leader Beijing views as supporting independence, China ramped up military activities, including sending surveillance balloons and changing civil aviation routes near Taiwan without consultation. These moves are part of China's broader strategy to normalize pressure on Taiwan without provoking direct conflict. In response to this, the U.S. approved its largest ever defense aid package for Taiwan, worth $567 million, further angering China, which views this as a violation of the One China principle. Chinese officials have maintained that no amount of foreign aid will deter their goal of reunification, possibly even by force if necessary. The combination of military drills, legal pressure, and the possibility of a blockade suggests a high-stakes standoff that shows no signs of de-escalating soon. Despite these tensions, Taiwan has turned its economic relationship with China into a strategic advantage. Its factories produce some of the most critical components in the global supply chain, and China can't afford to cut them off completely. Take semiconductors, for example. Taiwan is the world's leading producer of these tiny chips, and China is one of its biggest customers. It's a delicate balancing act, one that has allowed Taiwan to thrive economically even while facing constant political threats. The irony here is rich. China wants to absorb Taiwan, but it's also heavily dependent on Taiwan's economy. The two are locked in a strange dance, one where both parties benefit economically even as they remain political adversaries. Taiwan isn't officially recognized as a country by most of the world. Despite being a fully functioning democracy with a booming economy, Taiwan is technically in political limbo. Out of the 195 countries in the world, only 13 have formal diplomatic relations with Taiwan. Why? Because China has made it clear that recognizing Taiwan as an independent nation is the quickest way to ruin your diplomatic ties with Beijing. And most countries would rather not upset the economic behemoth that is China. This isn't just an abstract political issue, it has real-world consequences. Taiwan can't participate in many international organizations. For example, despite its impressive healthcare system, Taiwan isn't a full member of the World Health Organization. It gets invited to the meetings but has to sit on the sidelines. On top of that, when Taiwanese athletes compete in the Olympics, they can't even use their own flag or national anthem. Instead, they go by the name Chinese Taipei, a label that screams compromise. Despite its political challenges, Taiwan has found ways to exert influence through economic power. Take the US, for example. The United States doesn't officially recognize Taiwan as a country, but it sure does recognize the importance of Taiwan's economy. The US is one of Taiwan's biggest allies when it comes to trade, and they maintain a strategic ambiguity when it comes to Taiwan's political status. In plain English, the US is happy to do business with Taiwan, but doesn't want to anger China by saying it out loud. But here's the twist. Taiwan has cleverly positioned itself as indispensable. Its high-tech industries are so crucial to the global supply chain that major economies can't afford to ignore it. Countries may tiptoe around the issue of Taiwan's independence, but when it comes to trade, they're all in. Taiwan has made itself impossible to sideline. While Taiwan is famous for its massive semiconductor industry, more on that later, the real engine of its economy is something much smaller, literally. Taiwan's economic structure is built on the backs of small and medium-sized enterprises. These businesses make up more than 98% of the island's companies and employ about 80% of the workforce. In other words, Taiwan isn't just a nation of corporate giants, it's a nation of hustling entrepreneurs. While many countries rely on massive conglomerates to drive their economies, Taiwan has taken a different route. SMEs dominate Taiwan's economic landscape, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. These businesses are flexible, innovative, and quick to adapt to global market changes. They may not have the flashy names of multinational corporations, but they play a critical role in keeping Taiwan's economy diverse and resilient. Take, for example, the story of bubble tea, a beloved global phenomenon that originated from a small Taiwanese tea shop in the 1980s. That's right, Taiwan didn't just give the world semiconductors. It also gave us the joy of sipping tea with chewy tapioca pearls. And bubble tea is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Taiwan's SME-driven innovation. These smaller companies have also allowed Taiwan to remain competitive on the global stage. Taiwan's SMEs are constantly churning out new products, from cutting-edge tech gadgets to niche agricultural goods. In fact, these businesses are often the unsung heroes of Taiwan's economic success. While the semiconductor industry grabs the headlines, it's the SMEs that keep the economy humming. Now, let's talk about the real crown jewel of Taiwan's industrial empire: semiconductors. If you're not familiar with what semiconductors are, don't worry. I'll break it down. Semiconductors are the tiny yet powerful chips that serve as the backbone of almost every modern technology. These remarkable materials possess unique properties that allow them to conduct electricity under certain conditions, making them essential in controlling electronic circuits. Whether you're scrolling through social media on your smartphone, streaming a movie on your laptop, or navigating with your car's GPS, semiconductors are working behind the scenes. They also play a critical role in advanced technologies like artificial intelligence, renewable energy systems, and even space exploration. Without them, many of the devices we rely on daily would be impossible to create. And guess what? Taiwan is the world leader in producing them. In fact, Taiwan's semiconductor industry is so dominant that it controls more than 60% of the global market. That's right. This tiny island produces the majority of the world's semiconductors. The industry is led by Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, TSMC, a company that has become a household name in the tech world. TSMC is so important that global tech giants like Apple, Qualcomm, and Nvidia rely on its chips to power their devices. When the COVID-19 pandemic caused supply chain disruptions, the world got a harsh reminder of just how crucial Taiwan's semiconductor industry is. A global chip shortage sent shockwaves through industries, from automotive manufacturing to consumer electronics. Suddenly, everyone was scrambling to secure Taiwan's semiconductors. But it's not just about tech gadgets. Semiconductors are also critical to the defense industry, making Taiwan's role in the global supply chain even more geopolitically significant. Countries like the United States and China are keenly aware of how much they rely on Taiwan's chips, and this dependence gives Taiwan a strategic advantage that goes beyond economics. In many ways, Taiwan's semiconductor industry is the backbone of its economy. It has catapulted Taiwan into the upper echelons of global industry, making the island indispensable to the modern world. And as demand for semiconductors continues to grow, Taiwan's influence on the global stage is only set to increase. But the question remains: how long can Taiwan sustain this success? The geopolitical situation with China isn't going away anytime soon. And as Taiwan becomes even more critical to the global supply chain, it will likely face increasing pressure from all sides. So can Taiwan continue to walk this tightrope, balancing economic success with political isolation? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button.